Detective Mick Armstrong always came across as a good guy. He was the type who constantly talked about right and wrong, and he seemed approachable. When he first met Officer Nolan, the two hit it off right away. They quickly bonded over how much they had in common, and before long, they were talking almost every day. Nolan believed he knew Armstrong better than anyone else. Their friendship grew even stronger after they dealt with the serial killer Rosalind Dyer. She had actually warned Nolan about Armstrong, but he refused to believe her. He trusted Armstrong, thought of him as a friend, and that's what made it so devastating when the truth came out. Armstrong was dirty. Armstrong was a corrupt cop tied to the Armenian mob. He covered up their crimes, even making evidence disappear after Serb Darien murdered an officer. To keep himself safe, he went as far as killing another cop to bury the truth. Eventually, Armstrong wanted out. He told Reuben Darien that his debt had been paid long ago, but Reuben only mocked him. Once Armstrong sold his soul, there was no way back. He belonged to them now, and they weren't letting him go as long as he was useful. Reuben made it clear no evidence against Serb could ever surface. He ordered Armstrong to do whatever it took to make sure of that, even if it meant silencing anyone who got suspicious. Armstrong believed he had covered his tracks, but he overlooked one person, Nolan. Nolan had been close to everything, quietly connecting the dots. The more he saw, the clearer it became that Armstrong was the one behind it all. At first, it was painful for Nolan to accept that his friend could be capable of murder and corruption, but then he found undeniable proof of Armstrong's crime. Nolan discovered proof that Armstrong had killed a fellow officer to protect himself. He couldn't stay silent with something that serious, so he turned to the one person he trusted most, his partner. Nolan confided in Harper, showing her what he had uncovered, including footage of Armstrong getting text messages while they were searching for Serb. Nolan believed those texts were coming directly from the Armenian mob, guiding Armstrong throughout the investigation. Harper wasn't convinced. She doubted Armstrong would be reckless enough to use his regular phone and figured they wouldn't find much by checking. Instead, she came up with another plan. Her idea was a sting. They would act as if they had an informant inside the Armenian crew, hoping to push Armstrong into using his burner phone. If he believed someone was leaking information, he'd be forced to reach out to his contacts. Harper was right. Once Armstrong thought there was a mole, he used his burner to warn the Armenians. That gave Harper and Nolan his burner number, and for a moment, it seemed like they could tie him directly to the mob. But Armstrong was careful. He used a new burner every day, leaving no trail behind. With no history of his calls or texts, Nolan and Harper needed another angle. That's when Nolan thought of Rosalind Dyer. He reached out to the serial killer, asking what she knew about Armstrong. Dyer admitted she had broken into his apartment in the past and found a secret stash, evidence Armstrong was keeping as insurance. She described everything she'd seen, but Nolan knew her word alone wasn't enough to get a warrant. That left him with only one choice: break in himself. Nolan eventually broke into Armstrong's house, nearly getting caught in the process. Armstrong realized someone had been inside and even suspected who it was, but he chose not to act right away. Luckily for Nolan, he wasn't the only one closing in on Armstrong. The ALPD as a whole was gathering evidence against the Armenians. Bradford and Chen leaned on their Armenian contacts to track down Serb, while Lopez and West uncovered proof that Serb had been inside the car when a fellow officer was murdered. That evidence tied the Armenians directly to the killing, giving the LAPD everything they needed to bring the organization down and sealing Armstrong's fate in the process. Once Armstrong knew the walls were closing in, he reached out to Nolan. He asked to meet and claimed he wanted to explain himself, but he demanded Nolan come alone. Nolan agreed, arriving armed and ready, trying to convince Armstrong to surrender. But Armstrong had one last trick up his sleeve. He had planted evidence framing Nolan as the dirty cop, even getting Serb Darien to tell police that John Nolan was the one working with the mob. Armstrong then warned Nolan that incriminating evidence had been planted in his office. Desperate to clear his name, Nolan rushed to check, and sure enough, he found it just as the police were pulling up outside his home. What did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below.